Hi. Fuck it. In this video, I abandon a friend to a cruel fate. In Monster Hunter Wilds, when you hunt a specific monster 20, 30, 40, and 50 times, you are given a title. These titles do nothing mechanically, but socially, they're as endgame as it gets. I mean, who doesn't want to hold the title, Trap Ensnared? I'll be hunting them all in this fashion, 50 of each. This time, I'm hunting Nerscylla, effectively Spider-Man in monster form. Nerscylla unlocks the titles Nerscylla, Pincer, Trap, and Ensnared. Before starting the hunts, I already hunted 10 Nerscyllas, but I'll still be hunting another 50, up to 60. In the intro cutscene for Nerscylla in the story, we catch it capturing Rove, who's a great guy by the way. So when I went to fight it at first, and I heard Rove doing some dramatic poetry reading in the background, I wondered if it was just an atmospheric thing of the fight, and I didn't remember it. Alas, it's not. The non-player characters from some of the villages have little cyclical movements through the areas, and it seems like Rove can get captured by the Nerscylla while he's exploring the Ice Shard Cliffs. They like to tie him up in Area 5 here, and using the Go-Go Gadget Extendo Grabber he can be freed, at which point he'll thank the hunter and leave them a little gift. This is a cute little monster-specific interaction, and I'm glad it happened really early in my hunts because it gave Nerscylla a lot of charm in my eyes. But I do feel kind of bad because I didn't realize I could free Rove, or that he was even remotely nearby until a few hunts in, which means Rove was just actively watching me not save him over and over, so I'm sorry buddy. In the Ice Shard Cliffs, Area 5 is where Rove gets captured if a Nerscylla grabs him, but Area 4 is where the fun stuff really happens. This is a gross webby area, sort of like Nerscylla's nests, and it usually has these hatchlings around, but more importantly, there's unique moves that Nerscylla has only in this area. There may be more, but the two I witnessed were the one where Nerscylla would burrow under the ground and then come up, and the other where Nerscylla would glue itself to the ceiling and shoot webs down. It never used these moves outside of Area 4, and that makes sense, because this area is very unique with the webbed flooring. On top of this, when flashing Nerscylla out of the air in Area 4, it spends less time stunned on the ground, because the webs kind of catch it and let it pull itself back up. This was a neat touch too. There's also a special animation for paralyzing Nerscylla when it's half buried in the webs, and I got to see that a lot thanks to the Lalabarina switch axe. Another fun fact about Area 4, but more about switch axe, is that the sword gauge and axe gauge actually build up significantly more if multiple targets are hit. Because I would sometimes sweep through a lot of hatchlings, managing my gauge became a lot easier, and I could blast off with the sword way more often when these hatchlings were trying to get in the way. A fun little trick of the weapon, and potentially very useful when fighting a monster who has a posse. When looking through Nerscylla's loot, I found that it dropped Rubbery Hide, but the description of this item confused me. Rubbery hides shouldn't come from Nerscylla because they're a Gypceros drop. The quality hide of a Gypceros, the baggy, stretchy feel of it is oddly pleasing to the wearer. So why was I able to collect so many rubbery hides from Nerscylla? It's actually kind of dark. The description of Nerscylla reads as follows. Temnosirans that inhabit the Ice Shard Cliffs. They weave vast, sticky webs across their territory, using them and various status ailments to corner prey before utilizing pincer-like jaws to finish it off. Sometimes dead Gypceros can be found in the webs, the hides of which Nerscylla are known to adorn themselves with after devouring the rest of the carcass. I was wondering when I first saw these webs on the ceiling what monsters were in there, and it's hard to tell, but it seems like it might be a Gypceros. This also explains why there's this purplish, bluish cloth-like material covering Nerscylla, as they've harvested it from the bodies of Gypceros. I find myself sympathizing with Gypceros a bit. As a fellow Flash Pod enthusiast, that poor fella doesn't deserve to get carved up by Nerscylla, only by me. Even though it gets to steal some loot from the Gypceros table, Nerscylla doesn't get out of this scot-free. As a Temnosiran with Lalabarina, it doesn't fit into the more general categories of Wyvern, Bird Wyvern, or Beast for one of the generic gems, and it's not a big enough deal for its own gem, so these monsters end up being sad and gemless. Don't tell anyone, but under these clothes, I'm wearing the Rubbery Hide armor so I can farm up Blossom Dance meal vouchers while I hunt. That set gives 5 points of Foray, which buffs attack and affinity on monsters that are poisoned or paralyzed. Conveniently, Nerscylla has a 3-star weakness to Paralysis, so I used my stash of Lollabarina goodies from that 50 hunts a while ago and put together the Paralysis Switch Axe. This status triggered so many times when I was hunting, and especially because of how long the paralysis duration is, I could usually pull off my whole damage combo while it was paralyzed to squeeze all my big hits into that Foray buff window. I'm glad the Rubbery Hide armor gives an interesting skill like this because I never really engaged with Foray prior to this point. On top of this, I recently did some co-op hunts, which is very rare for me, and being able to paralyze monsters for the team was really fun. I probably wouldn't have even played the game this way if Foray hadn't made me think about adjusting my usual setup and trying out Paralysis. I sort of expected Nerscylla to be a bit like Rompopolo. As a non-Apex and a monster I didn't have much memory hunting, I figured it'd be a bit of a pushover. But the first time I engaged it, I found myself getting slept and webbed and poisoned over and over. A lot of my usual tricks I learned from Raydao didn't work, and that's because some of these moves are pretty unique. There's some moves where Nerscylla fires out a spray of webbing, and another where it stands up on its hind legs and stabs with its sharp spinneret. These two moves destroyed me so many times. As a projectile, the webbing shot can't be offset, which didn't surprise me, but it also couldn't be countered with the Switch Axe's sword mode counter. Similarly, the sleep stab couldn't be countered, and while I managed to offset the stinger part of it a single time, it still hit me and put me to sleep, which resulted in me missing the offset opening and getting hit anyways. Once I started to get a feel for Nerscylla's animations and telegraphs, I stopped getting hit by these two moves as often, but going into this fight confidently and using all my tricks that worked wonders against Raydao really punished me initially. It felt a lot like the first time I went to fight Balahara with Greatsword and kept getting spit on while holding an offset. It's great how the defensive tools are more or less potent dependent on the monster, and I love that there are moves that can't be countered or offset so easily, to restrict the usage of these powerful defensive tools. I did end up fighting this a bit later with dual blades when I was sharing a large gold crown I found with some friends, and I managed to dual blades counter dodge the spinneret sleep stab, so it seems like some form of counters do work, just not the Switch Axe sword counter one. Like Raydao, Nerscylla has a big, obvious weak point. When it extends those little face pincers and slaps them together, usually this will glow as a weak point, which can be focus striked for a bigger opening. Alas, because this move is tied to the attack itself and not really before the attack, this caught me off guard really often, and it was hard to catch it if I was busy getting knocked back and poisoned by it. It does last a good while though, so don't be afraid to go for it even if you're a little out of the way. While it can just do the move spontaneously, one tell I saw was after it does these two little forward swipes, it will either do a sweep or it will do the weak spot revealing pincer clap. Once I recognized this, it became a lot easier to simply wait it out, counter the pincers, and then grab the weak point, assuming I didn't end up paralyzing it along the way. Weak points are super useful, but monster specific, so if you're ever curious, check out the monster log for information on where a monster's weak point is so you can watch out for it during the hunt. Effectively Spider-Man in monster form, right? Nerscylla loves to swing around and shoot webs to pull itself across the battlefield, just like Rachna Kadaki from Rise. Although, if it's ever in the middle of one of these attacks, it's flash pod time. Even if it's simply sliding across the ground, flashing Nerscylla will knock it down. Another monster to feed my growing reliance, Nerscylla had me popping at least 3 flashes a hunt, often more, and between these openings and exploiting its 3-star weakness to Paralysis, by the end, it didn't spend much time on its feet. These hunts took me about 3 hours, 32 minutes, and 17 seconds, which equals out to around 4 minutes and 14 seconds per hunt. I gathered 123 claws, 446 carapaces, 110 rubbery hides, 129 spikes, 107 shears, 100 coma sacks, 95 certificates, and no gems because they don't exist. But most importantly, the titles Nerscylla, Pincer, Trap, and Ensnared, that I may become Trap Ensnared, Foray of Paralysis. If you liked this video and want to see another 50 hunts, let me know. Maybe there's a weapon you'd like to see me try next, or a monster I really shouldn't be slaying because that'd be wrong. Or maybe you think that the spider eradication protocol has not gone far enough, and that we must start targeting the sympathizers along with the actual spiders themselves, because infighting always works out in the end and it's super viable and really attractive. Let me know. Thanks for watching. Good luck, fellow hunters, and goodbye.